Hello, everybody. So I'm Allie, if you don't already know who I am. And if you missed the post in the group that I said I was interested in reluctantly doing a video to share with you guys what I know about various turnkey companies. And the reason I said reluctantly in that is because I never ever want to sound like I'm bad-mouthing another company. I don't want to be a vehicle for gossip. I really want to position myself where I'm supportive of everybody in this industry, because that really is what's most important. Is I love turnkey rental properties, and I want the industry as a whole to thrive. I think they offer such a good opportunity for people. So I really kind of think of myself, I want to be more of a helper than somebody who shares negative information. And so I'm actually not going to make this video public. It's just going to be for you guys in the group. And I want to be very clear that my intention with this is to just share facts that I know. And it is, so if that is a negative fact about a company, do your own due diligence, do your own thing. Different companies are going to work better for different people. I may prefer one company, someone else may prefer another. So ultimately, this is all, you need to do the work to figure out who you feel comfortable working with. But again, I feel like I know certain things that I could share with you guys in an attempt to educate you about the companies, also educate you into how turnkey companies can work, etc. So this video is probably going to be a little bit on the longer side. So what I'm going to do when the video comes out is in the comments, there's some very specific topics that I want to hit. And I'm going to tell you what those topics are now, but I'm also in the comments going to put kind of a label of about where in the video you can hear that topic. So if you're only interested in hearing one thing or about one thing, that way you don't have to watch the whole freaking video waiting until the one thing that you're wanting to listen to. So I'm going to try and kind of give you almost like a table of contents, but like a reference of where in the video different things are being talked about. So the topics that I want to hit, I've got some notes over here. First and foremost, I'm going to tell you of all the companies that you guys listed that you wanted to hear information about. I'm first going to tell you which ones I know nothing about. So if you're watching this video in hopes that I'm going to give you information on one particular company, if I don't know that, you're not stuck, not finding that out. So I'm just going to tell you who I don't know about. And then I'm going to do kind of a quick oversight or clarification on the different kinds of turnkey companies, the direct providers, the promoters and the marketers, stuff like that, just to make sure you guys all kind of have some background on the different types of companies. And then I'm going to go through each of the companies that I do know about. And I will say, and I'm just going to tell you what I know about them. I will say that in doing this little exercise of learning who you guys want to hear about and comparing that to who I know about, it became very clear to me that I definitely know more about the turnkey marketing companies and the bigger turnkey provider outfits. So there are a lot of mom and pop shops out there. There are a lot of good turnkey providers, maybe bad ones too. There are a lot of turnkey providers that operate on a much smaller scale. And the reason that I don't work with those is because I work with so many people buying turnkeys. Most of the providers we work with have to have enough inventory to support that. So there's nothing wrong with the mom and pop shops, and I'm sure there are some fantastic ones, but quite often that's why I've not worked with them myself, just because it doesn't fit what I need. So a lot of those I don't have information about. And in listing out the providers and the companies that I do know about, they are the bigger companies. But hopefully at least they'll give you things to think about, even if it's not the company specifically that you want information about. Maybe some things that I tell you about the different companies will give you ideas of what to look for as you meet other companies down the road. So with that said, I'm first just going to tell you who I don't know about that you guys asked for. So I'm just going to go down the list. American Anchor Homes, Kansas City Investment Real Estate, also I guess known as Storybrooke, I think. New Paradox, I think they're in Indy. High Return Real Estate, I don't know where they are. Freedom Real Estate Group in Ohio. Storehouse 310 Ventures, I believe, is in Wisconsin. And I'm actually, for the record, interested to connect with them because I've heard good things. And it seems like we tried to connect with them and either they didn't respond or something. So I actually want to learn more about them. Park in Indy, A few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, Park was a big turnkey provider in Indy, and I didn't work with them at the time, but I had heard good things. But fast forward, I actually haven't heard their name in quite a long time, so I don't know anything about their status. I don't know what, if anything, they're offering. Years ago they were great, but there are other providers I would say that about too who aren't great now. So I don't know about Park and Indy, but other than I knew about them 5 and 6 years ago. Smartland is in Cleveland, and I don't know anything about them, but I believe Tom Ott is a big name on BiggerPockets. I see him on the forums, and I'm pretty sure he's behind Smartland to some extent. I can't say that I've heard anything bad about him, but I haven't really heard anything good either. I just haven't heard much feedback other than I know he has a presence on BiggerPockets. We've talked quite a few times in the group about Bridge Turnkey in Kansas City. I'm actually pursuing meeting them and getting to know what they offer because you guys gave such good reviews. I want to learn more about their company. I personally know nothing about it right now, other than just people seem to have good experiences. So I'm hoping to learn more about them myself. All of the Florida providers, specifically Torcana and Holistic Investments. I'm not sure if Holistic Investments was formerly JWB. JWB was a big Jacksonville provider, and it seems like maybe they changed their name, but maybe they're separate. I don't know. The reason I don't know anything about the Florida providers is I've never had any interest in turnkeys in Florida, partially because there's just higher cash flow elsewhere. The plays in Florida are more of an appreciation situation. And this is kind of me personally, but really the only city that has kind of consistent cash flow, whatever cash flow they do have, is Jacksonville. And all I know for the past however many years is every year Jacksonville has been plummeted by a hurricane. And when I think about buying turnkeys for myself, I have zero interest in contending with hurricane drama personally. And you know, there's insurance and tax costs and all that kind of stuff. So for all of those reasons, I've never worked with any Florida turnkey providers. Not to say I never would, especially if someone showed up in Tampa or one of those, but I don't know that any of those markets have enough inventory to support an entire turnkey operation at this point. So I can't help you on Florida providers. And the other one I can't help you with, there are a couple exceptions, are the Memphis providers. So with the exception of Mid-South Home Buyers and REI Nation, who used to be Memphis Invest, I am going to talk about those two. Outside of those two, I actually like Memphis less than I like Florida as a market, but the companies Buy Memphis Now, Memphis Invest Properties, Turnkey Invest Properties, and Memphis Cash Flow, I couldn't tell you anything about them. I should probably do a video on why I don't really like Memphis. Even when Memphis was a big hotspot for turnkeys, I was not a huge fan personally. I don't like the industry diversification. I think there's higher returns elsewhere. There's been saturation problems over the years. There's been weird dynamics when the hedge funds who all bought in like 2010 to 2013 all sold their inventory back. I think there's a desirability problem about Memphis. I've never been an advocate for Memphis. So therefore, I really know very little about their providers, again, with the exception of Mid-South and REI Nation, which I will hit. So I think that is all. Those are all of the names of companies that you guys asked for information on, and I unfortunately can't give you any of that. So, okay, so let's move on. I'm going to do just kind of a quick overview of the different kinds of turnkey companies, just because I want to make sure you guys are really clear on who's who, because quite often when someone reaches out to me and they're like, hey, I'm interested in turnkeys, I'm talking to REI Nation, Narada, and Roofstock. What do you think about those three? And I'm like, the first thought in my head is those are three different models of companies. And technically that doesn't matter, but I think knowledge is power, and I think it's very beneficial to understand exactly what each kind of company offers so that you can better tailor it to what it is you're trying to accomplish. So direct turnkey providers, these are the REI Nation, Spartan Invest, US Reed, all of these people, these are the companies who are boots on the ground. They are the ones providing the properties. So they're going out, they're negotiating deals, they're finding distressed properties, they're buying them, they're rehabbing them, they're placing tenants, and they have the property management set up either in-house or a third party. They are the ones who actually provide the turnkey property, direct providers. The other one is, I don't know what the official name is. You could either call them turnkey promoters or turnkey marketers. And I think I recently saw someone refer to them as turnkey producers. But let's go with turnkey marketers, because promoters sounds a lot like providers and it gets confusing. So the turnkey marketing companies, these are Narada, Maverick, Real Wealth Network, Rent to Retirement. These companies are not the ones who are physically producing the properties. What they're doing is they're connecting you to direct providers. So they work with several direct providers in different markets. So if you call one of the marketing companies and you're like, hey, I'm interested in turnkey, and they're like, cool, we can get you properties in Cleveland, Harrisburg, Baltimore, or like whatever, and you're like, wait, what? It's because they're working with direct providers in those areas. Now, many people right off the bat, and I get why this would be the case, many people right off the bat are like, oh, I don't want to work with a turnkey marketing company. Why would I not want to work with a turnkey provider? I think there are so many reasons to work with a turnkey marketing company rather than straight through the direct provider. I'm going to put a link in the comments of a video of what those reasons are, because I already made the video. And I basically explained why I personally, all of my turnkeys I've bought with the help of a turnkey marketing company. I think I can't rave about them enough, and I think they offer a lot of benefit. I don't want to take up the time on this, what's already going to be a long video, to dive into that. But if you want to ask me about it, you totally can. But again, I'll link to that video so you can see my reasons for why I personally am a fan of working through the turnkey marketing companies or turnkey promoters rather than going direct to the provider. The third type of company is, I don't know what the name for them would be, hybrid or something, is the category that Roofstock and Home Union fall under. So Roofstock and Home Union, essentially, they're kind of, I guess they're most closely related to the turnkey marketing companies in that they can offer you turnkey properties across multiple markets, whatever. The difference between those two is that the turnkey marketing companies only source their properties through direct turnkey providers and no one else. They all come from turnkey providers. Roofstock, and I say I'm pretty sure this is how Home Union works. I know nothing about Home Union, but I know plenty about Roofstock. Is Roofstock also offers those kinds of properties, but they're sourced from all different places. They may be sourced from an individual, they may be sourced from a turnkey provider, they may be sourced from a developer. Like Roofstock doesn't have limitations on where the properties come from. And I'm going to dive more into Roofstock later when I start diving into the specific providers, but realize that that's the third type of company. So we have direct providers, they're the ones who physically produce the properties that you ultimately end up buying. The turnkey marketing companies who work with multiple providers. And then there's this third category of some sort, which Roofstock and Home Union fall under, where they are offering you turnkey properties, but they're not necessarily from turnkey providers. There'll be a video in the comments about why I prefer the turnkey marketing companies, which is very counter to what people would assume. It's probably counter to what I would have assumed when I started. I'll dive into Roofstock. I'm going to go through direct providers. I'm going to go through the marketing companies. And let's see, is there anything else I want to say? The last thing I'll say really about the providers versus the promoters, for the most part, when I'm talking about the types of turnkey companies, I'm not really talking about Roofstock and Home Union as far as that type of company, because there's not many of them. I'll dive into details about Roofstock, but otherwise, I'm really talking about turnkey marketing companies and turnkey providers. The one thing to understand when you're working with a marketing company is that they're not the ones providing the property management, all that. That all comes from the direct provider. And the reason I say that is because people will be like, oh, well, Narada handles the property management, and that's not accurate. They connect you with people who have the property management. So if I'm talking about a turnkey marketing company and I'm talking about the quality of their deals, the deals themselves are coming from the providers that they're choosing to work with. So it's not the turnkey marketing company who's producing the deals and therefore the quality of the deal. It's the providers who they're working with who dictate the quality of the deals. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope it'll be clear as to why I'm clarifying that. Okay, so we've talked about the companies I know nothing about. I've clarified the types of turnkey companies. So I think it's time to just start kind of diving in. So let me dive in first to the turnkey marketing companies, because I think there's a little bit less to say about them. So the turnkey marketing companies that I know of in existence, whether I know anything about them or not, and I don't know many outside of this, there's Martel Turnkey, Antoine Martel I've talked to before. There's Rent to Retirement. There's Morris Invest. There's Narada. There's Maverick Investor Group. There's Real Wealth Network. And then a really small one is Pinnacle. I don't remember if it's Pinnacle Investments. He mostly works with a provider out of Indy, so he's not as big as the rest of them. The rest of them offer properties in multiple markets. But Pinnacle is on that list, and I can't remember who works at Pinnacle, but I actually really appreciate him. He's on Bigger Pockets. I almost always agree with everything he says. I've talked to him on the phone before. Great guy, so great. I can't remember his name right off the bat. But let me just go through these briefly. Martel Turnkey, I don't really know anything about the quality of the deals that they offer. I don't even know what all markets they're in. Antoine Martel apparently only lives like half a mile from me. I've talked to him briefly, and we've talked about connecting. We've not gotten around to it, but we are neighbors. I've never talked to anyone who has bought a property with Martel's help. I say through Martel, not from Martel, because again, you're not buying the properties from the marketing companies. You're buying it through, really. I've never known anyone who bought a property through him to say like how it worked or any kind of testimonial. I've known several people who have calls set up with them or have reached out to them, possibly interested in buying a turnkey from them. But otherwise, I've not heard anything bad, but I've also not heard of anyone buying. So I don't really have any feedback on him. Morris Invest, I think you can search the post. There's been conversations about this. Certainly, if you go to Bigger Pockets and type in Morris Invest, you're going to find out, you're going to have more to read than you ever cared to. I personally don't know anything about what happened or any of the behind the scenes. I know nothing about them other than all I know is apparently he has fled to Portugal. There are multiple lawsuits against him. And the horror stories were that multiple people closed on properties only to find out the properties were either not rehabbed, one had burnt down 3 days before closing. That I could go on a whole different shtick about how it is our responsibility as the investors to do the due diligence, period. None of us should be closing on a house that we haven't personally confirmed through a property inspector or whatever, that it needs to be in the condition that was advertised. So I won't go on a soapbox about how I put some of that responsibility on the buyers. But with that said, it is, it's not cool of the sellers either. And all I know about the situation is that it wasn't Clayton Morris necessarily himself. It's the companies he was promoting or working with or whatever. Again, I don't know the details, but I recommend just going on Bigger Pockets, type in Morris Invest, and you can learn. This is kind of where I don't want to gossip because I don't know for sure all of the details. I need to be marking these as I talk about them so I don't forget who I talked about, except I lost my pen. So yeah, check that out on your own. But he is the one that has seemed to have the most drama and the most hardship associated with them. A lot of challenges and a lot of lawsuits apparently are going on. So do what you will with that one. Real Wealth Network. That is led by Kathy Fetke. I've actually hung out with her down in Nicaragua. We were all doing some real estate investing stuff down in Nicaragua. Yes, the third world country. And I hung out with her and her husband for a long weekend, and I thought they were phenomenal people. Much past that, I don't know really anything about Real Wealth Network other than they are a turnkey marketing company. I know a couple of the providers they work with. They have properties in Huntsville and Birmingham and some other places. I've never heard a bad thing. I know, the Real Wealth Network people are pretty big followers of that group, but it seems like, I'm not sure, don't quote me on this, I think Real Wealth Network may work with other kinds of opportunities also. I don't know if it's just turnkeys. For having met her and her husband and hanging out with them, I know surprisingly little about Real Wealth's offerings. but I definitely can't say anything bad about them necessarily. But again, I don't really know. Narada is led by Marco Santarelli, and I will say that everyone that I have known to talk to them has really enjoyed their experience. I guess he has investment specialist, or whoever his people are called. When you call, you connect. I think you get your own investment specialist. I think from what and this is not from firsthand experience, I have talked to Marco on the phone. It's been years ago, but I haven't worked with him in depth. But on the plus side, I believe the customer service experience is top notch from what I hear. I've really never heard otherwise. Narada offers properties in a lot of different markets. I think he's up to like 15 or 17 different markets or something. The two major things that so before I say what kind of the more negative things, I will say the positives are customer service. If you can find top-notch customer service, rock on. Like, it's not always a thing in turnkeys, and it seems like they offer a really legit service. So the next things I'm going to say are not to impact the positive statement at all. It's just, again, relaying what I know. One thing I personally don't like about their website is that they don't include maintenance and vacancies in their pro formas. And honestly, at this point, we all know that those are reality, and no number without those is going to be a realistic number. So in a way, that's kind of fluffing the numbers. And there's enough unforeseen things with rental properties and with turnkeys anyways, when you do take into account everything. So I don't think it's helping anything to fluff the numbers by not putting maintenance and vacancy in. Everybody else does it. I have a hard time working with a company that doesn't put those things in, because it is a reality, and to me it feels like fluffing the numbers. The other thing I know, and these are the kinds of things that I don't really like to share, but I kind of feel obligated. I believe, I'm pretty sure it's a fact, that Marco doesn't necessarily go to Marco or someone from Narada. I believe that they don't necessarily go in person to vet the turnkey providers that they promote. So if they say, hey, we really like this provider in whatever market, we think you should work with them, that's them saying it without having been and really thoroughly, I mean, maybe they vetted the company to some degree, obviously, but I'm a big fan of boots on the ground. Like, I've learned more about turnkey providers, and when I'm in person with them and seeing the properties, for me, my eyeballs are the only thing that actually tell me what I can deem to be the truth. Because otherwise, I'm going off what people tell me, right? So having been around turnkeys as long as I have, I'm nearly certain he doesn't do boots on the ground vetting of the providers, which makes me a little itchy about who he's recommending. Because again, the quality of the property is going to come from that provider. And if you haven't been there, as someone who will say, hey, I really like this provider, I want to, I support them, I would like to be able to tell you that more than me just kind of guessing. So that is something about Narada, I believe, is kind of a thing. And I don't know, as far as like Martell and Real Wealth Network, any of those guys, I don't know if they go do boots on the ground vetting either. So it may not just be Narada. But using that as a segue into Maverick, a lot of you guys know that I am a big fan of Maverick. One thing I can say about them is they never recommend a turnkey provider that they have not personally gone boots on the ground and vetted for a substantial amount of time. So I would say that a downside to Maverick is they don't offer as many markets as, say, Narada. If you compare the market list between the two companies, Narada is going to look fancier all day long, because Maverick won't just promote anybody. They really take some time to get to know these providers. They really sit down with these providers and let them know, hey, if we send our clients to you, this is what we expect, and this is what we need to happen. So there's a long kind of vetting period that Maverick takes. And so the upside to that is great, to me, they have the most super thorough vetting processes of the turnkey providers of any of them. But then the downside of that is they can't always offer as much, and maybe it doesn't look quite as pretty. But that is one reason that I have really stuck with them, is I've seen all of the behind the scenes with them, and I have literally traveled the world with the Maverick partners. And trustworthiness is one thing I can thoroughly attest to with them, and that's not something I can say for everybody. I will put a link in the comments to Maverick if you want to check them out. Let's see, was there anything else about Narada, Maverick, Real Wealth? Ironically, me, Kathy Fetke, and the Maverick guys have all hung out in Nicaragua together. We all like each other a lot. The only one left is Rent to Retirement. On the upside, I've never heard a bad thing. They seem to have some representatives, I don't think from the company, but there's a lot of rent to retirement buyers now who are chiming in on bigger pockets. To me, it sounds like I don't know, they all sound very kind of scripted. But here's the thing. The good news is I've never heard a bad thing about them. A lot of people, they kind of have one of the biggest presences on bigger pockets all of a sudden. I'm not sure how, but they do. But where it all comes crashing down for me, as if you guys have been following the post, you realize I just figured this out for sure. They upcharge the properties. I can't say for sure about Real Wealth or Martell, but Maverick and Narada and those guys, the price for the property that you see listed on their website is the exact price that you would get the property from the direct provider. There's no upcharging by these companies. That's really important to know. And it really kind of bothers me in my core that I just figured out that it seems as though Rent to Retirement does upcharge these properties. So recently in one of the posts, Maverick had a property listed in Kansas City and Rent to Retirement had the same property. And for the record, you know, the providers can work with multiple marketing companies. So that's why you might see crossover on the properties. But Rent to Retirement had it listed for $5,000 more than Maverick and the direct provider. So you know, I'm going to talk about this some with the direct providers I'm talking about, but turnkeys already kind of have a reputation. I don't even want to call it a reputation because it's not really a fair one, but people have assumptions about turnkeys and people love to hate turnkeys. And so situations like this bother me because it doesn't help the turnkey name. And I think turnkeys are fantastic. They've changed my life. And so when companies do things like this that are out of the norm and kind of in benefit of themselves, I don't dig it. And it'd be one thing if it was blatantly disclosed saying, hey, heads up, you know, we have a $5,000 fee tacked onto this. If you're transparent about it, cool. But what bothers me about it is if a brand new person wanting to buy a turnkey goes to Rent to Retirement and naively buys this property for $5,000 more than they would have needed to pay for it anywhere else. And I also don't know how that works with appraisals because turnkey appraisals kind of tend to hit the price mark right on anyways. So if the price is suddenly higher, I don't know how that contends with the appraisals or if the appraisals are suddenly coming in low or how that balances out. So that's my feedback. I mean, my thing is if Rent to Retirement offers the same service as Narada or Maverick or Real Wealth Network or whatever, even if they're the nicest guys on the planet, why work with them if nobody else upcharges the property? So I'm going to get off of that soapbox because it was not something that I preferred to find out, actually. And I've debated about whether to, kind of mention something to Zach about it, who runs Rent to Retirement, or, just like ask him, because I don't know information other than it looks like they upcharge their property. So that is all of the turnkey marketing companies or the turnkey promoters or producers, whatever you want to call them, that I know of. They are all, I would consider that group to be the biggest group. I mean, they're all the biggest marketing companies: Martell, Rent to Retirement, Morris Invest, Narada, Maverick, and Real Wealth Network. All of them actually have a pretty big, person or personality behind them. Antoine Martel, Zach, is it Leemaster or something? Clayton Morris, Marco Santorelli, Matt Bowles, and Kathy Fetke. So the good thing about all of them is they've all been in the I don't know about Martel. I don't know how long, or Zach. I don't know how long they've been in the game, but all the rest of them are long-term turnkey people. I would consider all of them very knowledgeable. But yeah, again, check out the video as to why I encourage you to work with one of those companies rather than the direct providers. So, okay, I have no idea how long this video is yet, but Okay, the last thing we're going to do is I'm going to barrel down the turnkey providers. So these are the direct turnkey provider companies that I know something about. And my caveat to talking about everything I've talked about on this, but especially with these providers, I don't know everything about these providers. I'm only going to tell you what I do know. And again, I think it's up to you to really vet them out yourselves. Decide whether what I say, you like it or you don't. I'm not telling you how to think. I'm just telling you what I know. Okay, so let me start with Roofstock because they are a slightly different category actually, because they're not a direct provider, but they are a very big name in this kind of industry. The thing I don't like about Roofstock, is it only one thing? There's a couple things. Number one of the more minor things is I don't like that they source their properties from so many different places, because I think that leaves some room for inconsistencies or lack of incentive, or, you know, like if Narada is working with a direct provider, that provider has a lot of incentive to continue performing for Narada, because otherwise Narada or Maverick's going to take their buying power and bounce. They'd be like, check ya, like whatever. But if one person is selling like 2 properties through Roofstock, you know, they don't have a lot of, they're not trying to keep a long-term relationship with Roofstock, so what do they care? Like, you know, so I think it opens up some doors for things to get a little itchy. But more factually, there was a point in time, and I think their website does not say this now, but there was a point in time where Roofstock's website said, don't do your own due diligence, we'll do it for you. And just that messaging alone nearly shot me through the roof. As a real estate investor, never, ever, ever buy anything or buy into anything without doing your own due diligence. Because if we all got in the business of taking other people's words for everything, can you see how that might pan out? Like, hello, it is up to you as the investor. And this was my beef with some of the buyers from Morris, is that they were raging mad at Morris Invest or whoever the company was because they were sold this terrible product, which yes, that would make me ragingly mad, but you have a responsibility in this too. It is up to you to verify everything you're being told by a company. So for Roofstock to say that don't do due diligence, I pretty much wrote them off right then. I was like, that is the worst thing you could ever teach an investor. And then in a similar light, they have, even as of recently that I know of, have said, don't do your own property inspection. You can piggyback off ours. We'll have the inspection done. We'll give you the report. Again, hello, do your own due diligence. Don't take their word for anything. And there has also been cases where they advertise that they sell turnkey properties, but they also sell as-is properties, meaning it's not fully rehabbed. It's you're getting it as is, end of story. And that would be fine if their messaging was more clear on that, because I know some brand new investors who wanted a turnkey property, and when they were told, oh, well, we have this really great as-is property, they're like, okay, because they didn't know. They didn't know what comes with as-is properties, or how different that is from turnkey or whatever. So my beef with Roofstock really is in the messaging. And I have known many turnkey buyers who have ended up with problem properties because they trusted their property inspection because they told them to, or they didn't do their own due diligence because they told them not to, or they bought an as-is property without even realizing what they were getting into. And while all of that technically is on the up and up, I've not appreciated Roofstock's I think they need to try harder with their messaging to be very clear of the repercussions of all of those things. So honestly, it made me mad. And so I've really just kind of written Roofstock off. I'm actually working with someone now who has a couple of Roofstock properties, and they've been terrible. And I'm not cool. Okay, so Roofstock aside, all of these are direct turnkey providers. And specifically, they are direct turnkey providers that I can tell you something about. Again, this is not really including any mom and pop turnkeys. It's really kind of the biggest players in the game that I wanted to hit on. The two that I know the least about, though, but I know something, ROI Turnkey, they have properties in Huntsville and I think Birmingham, and I feel like maybe one other place. I have talked to them on the phone. I've heard some good reports about them. They are a bigger outfit. I know Narada refers for them. Kathy over at Real Wealth Network refers for them. And I was even thinking of also referring for them, but I never really got a chance to go visit the operations or really kind of put my own eyeballs on what they offer. And I can't remember what else I found out when I was looking into them, but I would not write them off necessarily. I think I've heard a couple reviews that are kind of, I forgot to talk about Maverick's reviews on Bigger Pockets. I'll kind of come back to that. But they are a big outfit out of an Alabama outfit. That is an option. Not that it really matters, but I think the owner is either like Jehovah's Witness or Mormon or so. So if you're a very religious person, might be a really good company. I think, is it Storehouse 310 Ventures is also a fairly open religious company. And then Holton Wise. James Wise is a big name on Bigger Pockets, and I actually know absolutely nothing about this company. However, the reason I wanted to bring them up, I have their website pulled up right here. One reason I don't know much about their company is because I've always kind of been confused by the company. When I'm looking at their website right now, and it says Holton Wise, commercial and residential real estate, sales, property management, maintenance, insurance, digital media, and education. Right then, you lost me. I don't know what you offer at that point. And I clicked on property search, like properties for sale, and I saw absolutely no properties for sale, but there are videos talking about getting access to the MLS searching and analysis, and the investment properties for sale show. And this has kind of been my experience with them on Bigger Pockets, is I see James chime in all the time, and he puts a lot of posts on Bigger Pockets. But honestly, I have never figured out what he's saying or what he offers or whatever. I think somebody in the Turnkeys group said that people either love him or hate him. I think he is a big personality, but after that, I don't really know much. But I wanted to bring up that name just to say that they are an option. They're out of Cleveland. It seems like they have a pretty solid reputation for whatever it is they do. I'm not quite sure. Okay, so those are the two I know the least about. Memphis, we'll hit those. Mid-South home buyers, I don't have personal experience with them. I know that they are the ones who are notorious for having a waiting list. I think somebody in the Turnkeys group recently said they've closed, maybe a couple of people have said they've closed on a property with them. For the most part, I've always heard of people who are on their wait list. I don't usually hear from people who have closed, other than the couple. But I've never heard a bad thing. Everybody raves about them. What I don't personally understand is I believe their properties are lower end, like D neighborhoods, C minus. They are in notably lower ranked neighborhoods and property quality, or I've heard the properties are in really good quality, but the neighborhoods specifically are much lower in quality than most any other turnkey provider. And what I don't know for myself personally is when you get into the lower ranked neighborhoods, your risk increases dramatically between your tenant pool, repairs, evictions, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know how those two go hand in hand, but I've heard nothing but good things about them. But like I said, I don't know exactly the basis of how that works given what they offer, but people seem to rave about them. But you are, I think, looking at like an 8 or 9 month wait list, and who knows with COVID and all that kind of stuff. The other big Memphis player is REI Nation. They used to be called Memphis Invest. Chris Clothier is the main owner of that company, and years ago, me and Matt Bowles from Maverick met him at IHOP on International Pancake Day, and we all ate free pancakes until we were going to explode. And that was my first time meeting Chris in person. I really value his business acumen. I really value a lot of things that he has put into REI Nation. I would argue that REI Nation / Memphis Invest probably has the best customer service of any of the big turnkey direct providers. Turnkey providers themselves don't usually have a lot going for them as far as customer service, communication, all that. That's really one reason the turnkey marketing companies come into play for me, because they're better on the customer service side. But REI Nation has always been seemingly the exception of really tying in good customer service to being a direct provider. So that's huge. And like I said, I really valued a lot of Chris's business acumen. Everything they have set up, I think, is great. They're in a few different markets. There are things, Chris and I have, we've talked on Bigger Pockets, even openly, like in posts. There was a post about asking about my company, and Chris really stepped in and defended. We've all been bashed as turnkey companies. We've all been bashed by somebody, and he really stepped in and stood up for me. So we really had a close relationship for quite a long time. And I always told people, I'm not a fan of the Memphis market, but if you were going to buy in Memphis, I would absolutely buy through Memphis Invest. That was a few years ago. My big beef with them now is, and backing up, one thing I loved about Chris is we could actually disagree pretty heavily on certain points, and we always could talk about them very objectively and educated, and always leave on good terms. You'll see it in some old Bigger Pockets posts. I really always valued that quality of our relationship, that we could agree to disagree and, you know, still be friends at the end of it. I guess it doesn't totally matter for analyzing turnkey companies, but I really liked and valued Chris, who's behind that company. However, one thing that I really am not digging about REI Nation right now is it appears to be that they now are putting financing contingencies in their sales contracts, meaning the financing contingency is going to have to do with appraisals. So either turnkey providers don't make any mention of what happens if you get a low appraisal, or some might say if the appraisal comes in lower than your purchase price, more than, I don't know, 5% or a couple $1,000s or something, you have the option to switch out of that property if you would like to. Like, you're not going to be forced to close on that property. And if someone has a financing contingency, that's usually what it says. I have a dog down here who keeps running all over my feet. That's what I keep doing down here. And I'm on a video. I should pick her up and show her to you, but try not to sidebar here. So that's in all of the year. I've been working with turnkeys now since 2011, so 9+ years. And the way that it works with all of the turnkey providers that I've always worked with is that if you are under contract for that property and the appraisal comes in significantly low, or in some cases low at all, they will allow you to get out of that property. So you might switch into another property, or they're not going to force you to buy it. All of a sudden, in the last maybe 6 months or something, a lot of people have been saying online, oh, well, turnkeys are overpriced. You have to overpay for a turnkey. And I was like, what are people talking about? Like, it's always been a thing of like, yeah, you're going to pay a premium for a turnkey because all the work is done for you. But I was wondering what this overpay word was. And I finally realized REI Nation now is putting financing contingencies in their contracts that say, if your appraisal comes in low, you're on the hook. Like, you have to still buy the property. And for anyone not familiar with how that works exactly, is if, let's say you're going to buy a property, your purchase price is $130,000. If the property only is valued at $120,000, you have to put $10,000 extra in to the property with the lender. So instead of, you have to put your down payment down, but in addition, $10,000, because what that's saying is that the appraiser is saying, well, this property is only worth $120,000. And the bank's like, well, I don't want to be at risk or on the hook for $130,000 if it's only worth 120. Are you crazy? But if you give me the 10 grand to make up for that risk, cool, we have a deal. That's how this all works about low appraisals. And it's not the worst thing in the world to have to put more money in, because really it just means more equity to you. It's not lost money. It's not a fee. It's whatever. But that can be a sticker shock if you have your money set aside for a down payment and now your property just appraised $10,000 low, and REI Nation is saying, well, you're on the hook for it, so you got to fork over that extra 10 grand. Well, that's a logistical problem for some people. And that is because then the argument comes up of, well, wait a minute, but if the property is only worth $120,000, but you're charging me $130,000. Screw you. Like, hello. And so because REI Nation's been doing this, at least this is how I've interpreted it all. Since REI Nation is doing this, now people are saying, oh, well, in order to get a turnkey property, I have to overpay for it, because it seems like about $10,000 seems to be kind of the going low appraisal amount. And it's created this, I mean, I'm constantly, every single day, having to explain to people that this is not the norm. You should not be overpaying for a turnkey property. I have a video on this too. You should not be overpaying. Yeah, you're going to pay your premium to get your nicer product because it's rehabbed and all that, but paying a premium is very different than overpaying. You should not be paying over market value for a turnkey property, period. And now because REI Nation is doing this, it has put this idea in everyone's head that you have to overpay for a turnkey. Inaccurate. And therefore I'm like, Chris, I love you, man, but like, I'm out, man, because it really makes all the rest of our lives harder. Kind of like rent to retirement upcharging. I think it does not help the turnkey reputation at all. I think it's not nice. And more so, people don't know what they don't know. And so when REI Nation, who's like the godfather of turnkey, says, well, you have to overpay for a turnkey, well, they think that's the norm. And they don't realize that 95% of the other companies are never going to make you buy that property if at an overvalued price. So that has been grinding my gears a little bit. And why, when I used to, you know, I said I don't like Memphis, but if someone wanted Memphis, I'd say definitely go to Memphis Invest, because I like Chris Clothier. I know what they're doing behind the scenes. I like it. It's on the up and up. I still think that's probably true, but their cash flow is not that high. And now with this financing contingency, that really, when someone says they want Memphis, I just say, I don't know anything about the providers there. Like, you'll have to figure it out on your own, because I no longer am really supporting the one company that I kind of supported in Memphis. So the next one is Spartan Invest. I believe they're primarily out of Birmingham. I'm not sure if they have maybe Huntsville or a couple other places, but Spartan Invest now has done something similar to what I'm not happy about REI Nation doing. It's not the financing contingency, but what they're doing. And Maverick actually went to talk to them to potentially refer for them. And Maverick said, we're not sending our buyers to you because of what I'm about to tell you. They now are convincing people to buy the property before tenants are placed. And I also have a video as to why I don't think this is a good thing. I should not have made this video during doggy dinner time. So what they're doing is convincing people that you should close on your turnkey rental property before tenants are placed. And I think they're offering some level of rent guarantee or whatever, or we'll pay your mortgage if there's not tenants in 90 days or whatever. But this opens up a whole new door of problems when you don't already have tenants. First of all, you can't confirm that you can even get the rental amount that's being advertised. You don't know what kind of quality tenants you can get. You don't know how soon you're going to get tenants. All the while, you have to keep paying your mortgage. Once that rent guarantee goes out, I think I heard of someone who, it was like 9 months later and they still didn't have tenants, and they, you know, the rent guarantee had run up. So they're sitting here paying a mortgage on a house with no tenants. And that, kind of like I was saying with REI Nation, what really bothers me about that is people don't know what they don't know. And so new turnkey investors, or turnkey investors in general, don't realize all of the potential consequences of not buying with a tenant. It's why the turnkey model offers properties with tenants, to avoid a whole set of potential problems. And so now that Spartan Invest is, you know, if someone calls Spartan Invest and they're like, oh, well, you know, you can close on this property with no tenants. People don't know that that's not cool, and that 95% of the other turnkey providers would never make you close on a property without tenants. If there's not tenants in, they'll delay closing until there are tenants. I don't know really specifically the quality of Spartan Invest. I think it's probably okay and it's probably fine, but that, you know, you'll kind of see a theme with me. I get really irritated when messaging is not clear for people. And if anyway, even if it's not intended to be deceitful, it becomes deceitful, and it can get people into properties that they're not expecting certain challenges with. And they don't know that those qualities about a provider can bring forward those challenges. And then they end up with the challenges, and then they're mad at turnkeys, and it's a whole big thing. So it's like, again, just like I have to spend so much time now explaining to people why you should not be overpaying for a turnkey, now I have to explain to people why you should not be buying a turnkey with no tenants. So really it becomes a big thorn in my side. But with REI Nation, Spartan Invest, all those, you know, I think the quality of their properties are fine. I do think there's higher cash flow elsewhere, but a big one that you guys have seen in the post, US REIB. Here's an interesting thing about US REIB. They have a decently poor reputation if you look them up on Bigger Pockets or reviews or whatever. But if you really read all of the reviews, all of the negative with US REIB is really specific to their property management side, not to the properties. I've heard little, if nothing, negative about the actual properties other than like, you know, maybe the quality of something wasn't up to par, but that's what you find in a property inspection. So who cares? And I know many people who have bought properties from US REIB that the inspections have come back perfectly normal. Everything seems to be intact. Everything's good. But the reviews really seem to center around the property management side. The major thing to know about this with any provider is you can always change out your property managers. You don't even have to take the property managers that come with the company. But, you know, if US REIB, for instance, offers the best turnkey properties under the sun, but their property management's terrible, I would not rule them out because I can change out the property managers. There's quite a few really good property management companies in Kansas City that you could switch to. So bad property management for me is not a deal breaker. It is so much easier if they're not terrible, especially if you're new because you don't know what you're looking for or what you're working with here. I do know that Rent to Retirement works with US REIB. I think Narada does. I can't remember. Maverick does, and Maverick has a very exclusive relationship with them where the Maverick buyers have a separate property manager contact than any other US REIB buyers, which is interesting. So actually, despite all the bad reviews, the Maverick buyers of US REIB have never given a bad review because they have their own property management set up. So I can give you more information about that if you're interested. So something really to keep in mind about US REIB, again, all the reputation of them, the bad reputation is seemingly about the property management and not the properties. That's a huge distinction and very important for you to understand. The last one I'm going to hit on is Turnkey Property Pro. These are key providers. These are not standard turnkey providers, or this is not a standard turnkey, or let's say, this is not a provider of standard turnkeys. These are the keys. If you've been around the Facebook group, you know I was actually working with the keys. I still am a little bit, but originally I was working with TPP, and I think that they have a fantastic offering, a fantastic product. I have seen the properties personally and toured them. I've seen the rehabs. I've seen the befores, the afters. I've been to their offices. I know everyone who works there. And I think they are great deals. But I will say that TPP is really kind of undergoing two things. Number one, internal business organization. And while this has been going on, client communication has really suffered. And the other thing is that they're trying to put their focus away from individual investors and trying to work more with like hedge funds and bigger institutionalized buyers. So for those two reasons, I have stopped recommending Turnkey Property Pro. They're still fantastic guys. Like I said, the deals are fantastic, but the logistics around actually getting one have gotten to a level of complication that I don't really support, and I don't want anyone to have to go through. So I have personally stopped recommending them. But if you run into them and they offer you something you like, they are on the up and up and they are legit. I don't recommend them for new investors at all. I don't recommend keys for new investors at all. I would say stay with the standard because the key process is a more advanced process, and people who have not invested yet aren't familiar with what's normal in that kind of process versus what's not. So yeah, okay. I hope this has been helpful because that is the end of my list of the companies that I can tell you something about. Like I said, I don't know most of the mom and pop shops. I would like to get to know more of them. I would like to open up the providers I work with. I think the mom and pop shops can offer really good things. I just don't know who they are right now. But I hope also too, if maybe even if you weren't looking at any of these specific company I was talking about, that some of the dynamics of what I talked about around them is helpful, as far as like, wait, I need to make sure there's tenants, or wait, I need to make sure to do my own property inspection, or I should not be overpaying for a turnkey. So I hope, though, it was also a learning experience also. And like I said, the more I learn about companies, I will hopefully do a part 2 to this video. And I'll leave on one note. I meant to talk about this with Maverick, but I'll make it kind of a broad statement. One thing I was gonna say about Maverick is, of all of the turnkey marketing companies, I personally trust and value Maverick above all of them. But what's interesting about that is, if you search them on BiggerPockets, you're only going to see more negative reviews, and there's not many of them. There are 2 distinct threads. One is about a Birmingham provider that they used to work with, and I'm going to kind of go into details about that in a second, but the other is an old Berkey provider that they used to work with that went bottoms up. And these are there. I mean, there's only 2 or 3 threads on BiggerPockets that even mention Maverick really, but they happen to be in not good light. And so what I want to say on that note, as far as when you guys Google or search for reviews on these companies, not to make your life harder, but it is really hard to know the truth based on some of the reviews. For instance, like I said, US Reeve has a pretty bad reputation, but if you really dig into it, it's not about their properties at all. It's just about property management. So being able to see that detail, because you don't want to rule out a perfectly good property if it's just a matter of managing your manager. But, you know, so I would not personally discount US Reeve despite their reputation. REI Nation, Spartan Invest, those have fantastic reputations, huge reputations, but I personally disagree with some major points of their business model. So it's a hard thing to say. And then I'll use Maverick as an example. So 2 things that I see. So I've been around BiggerPockets since 2012. I've been around Turnkey since 2012. And so I see what people post and I see who responds to them. If you go on the Birmingham thread that talks about Maverick, you're going to see a very disgruntled investor. What you're probably not going to see is 7 pages later at the end of it, Maverick went over and above to make the situation right. They were not legally responsible to do so. They didn't have to do so, but out of the goodness of their heart, they did it. And that original poster of the thread actually acknowledged that and told everybody, hey, it's turned out all good. But guess what? No one reads 7 pages in. So most people don't know that that's even at the end of that thread. And in those 7 pages, so I was around when all of that, this whole big thing happened. So I know who the players were. I know what happened. I know everything about it. And I can tell you, of the 7 pages of people talking about that situation, very few of them have ever even bought turnkeys. Next to none of them had any experience with Maverick or this provider. You know, people love to talk. There's trolls. People love to bash turnkeys. And so it was really unfortunate for Maverick because it made them look terrible. But the reality was, people all over that thread had no actual idea what they were talking about. And when, you know, knowing the truth of the whole situation, it was terrible what happened, but it was made so correct. And I've never known another company to make that big of an effort to correct something that it wasn't even their fault. And then there's another thread about Maverick where I hope he doesn't watch this video, but there was a particular person who chimed in and gave a really bad report about a Maverick situation. And what actually, I've seen this happen with 2 people who have left really bad reports. What both of those people left out were the levels of effort and help that were offered to them by Maverick and other people, and they declined all of the help. And then when things kept going terrible, they just raged and left it all and spewed it all over BiggerPockets. But they never once said how much help was being offered to them, and they declined it. So that was kind of bad. And one of them, so much so, had emailed me and said, hey, I really want to post my bad experience. And I said, I do it. Like, that's what those forums are for. But when I saw his post, I said, you know, you left some stuff out, like some major props for Maverick out. And, you know, you blatantly did not accept help. You would not take anyone's advice. and whatever. And he's like, you know, you're kind of right. He's like, yeah, maybe I should have relayed. I was like, yeah, because there's a lot of people getting hurt by what you post, all of our reputations. I was even in it. And I said, you know, you do you, but you're sitting here telling me that you didn't paint the accurate story. So would you consider either taking the post down or updating the post to paint the full picture? And he said, let me think about it. I'll get back to you. And I said, okay. About a week goes by and he emailed and he said, hey, I thought about it and I don't want to update the post. And I was like, seriously? Like, it's misleading. And so I give those examples to finish this whole conversation off of, this is not necessarily good news because it makes all of our jobs harder, because it is already hard to figure out what turnkey company to work through without reviews. But also realize that when you see reviews about turnkey companies, I also have a video about why turnkey companies don't have more of an online presence and why they tend to have a bad name. It makes it that much harder to decipher through who you should be working with. I mean, it's unfortunate. The best, you know, this is one of the reasons I started the Facebook group, is so people could talk openly. Have you bought through someone? Did you like it? Did you not? And that way it's more objective information versus just having a thread full of internet trolls, which is not helpful. So I hope all of this has been helpful. Like I said, I told you who I didn't know about. I kind of clarified who the different kinds of companies are. And then I went through the turnkey marketing companies that I know about and the turnkey providers. And then I kind of gave an unexpected bonus session on how to kind of understand the reviews of people on BiggerPockets, and really that goes for anywhere. I do apologize for anyone wanting more detailed information about anything. I realize that these are very high-level conversations. These are really only the biggest companies out there. I realize there's a lot more details that could be offered. The list could go on and on, but let's consider this a tip of the iceberg, just kind of starting point. And we'll see if we can't learn more about more companies. I will share that as I go. If you learn about different companies, please post it in the group, because that's what we're here for. Oh man, this might be the longest video I've ever done for you guys. So like I said, I hope it's helpful. And if you have specific questions, feel free to reach out, but I'll leave you some links in the comments, including kind of a table of contents of where each section in the video is. So you don't, if you ever want to go back and reference one thing, you don't have to sift through the whole video looking for it. So on that note, let me know if this was helpful. Let me know anything that was not included that you really would have liked to be included. I'm always open for feedback. I hope you guys know that at this point, and I want to be as helpful as possible. So, but I can't do that if you guys don't tell me what it is you want, or what you love, what you hate, anything. So let me know how I can help. If you have any turnkey questions, more specific questions about the providers, let me know. And here's the sign off. See you soon.